Take it away.
Hi, Simon. Thank you. First, let me say it's been a pleasure to be here presenting alongside my fellow H818 students. There are some amazing projects taking shape, and it's been inspiring to be part of that journey. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you a little about the journey that I've taken over the last few months in developing my open online course entitled Mobile Blogging for Educators. So I'm going to share a bit with you about myself and my background, and I'll also describe briefly some of the research that I did and the process that I went through that informed my course development. But more importantly, I want to share with you some of the topics and themes that are emerging within the online course discussions and how it's affecting change within my own workplace. It's worth noting at this stage that initially the course was hosted internally on my employer's VLE, but since I've taken the step to host a second version of the course on Open Learn Create, which has enabled me to share the course more widely and openly through network practice. So, in terms of my own background, to start with, here's a little about me. I'm a literacy practitioner working in the further education sector in Scotland. I've been working in the field for around 20 years, and after studying my undergrad degree with the OEU and gaining my teaching qualifications a few years later, I developed something of a reputation for using technology in my learning and teaching practice. So prior to starting the MAOD, I already had around 15 years worth of experience in creating online learning content. But as is always the case with projects like this, although my interests were always centred in literacy development, a chance conversation with a colleague around the subject of inclusive practice drew my attention to blogging as a means by which students can engage in literacy practice in a more meaningful way, because blogging enables them to write about subjects that are important to them. It's the very exemplification, if you like, of culturally responsive learning and teaching practice. So this realisation highlighted to me that there was something of a dichotomy, because became clear that there was a divergence between learning and teaching practice and learners' lived experiences. So, for example, where teaching practice requires students to write responses to set essay questions on desktop devices, which are kept behind lock and key in a classroom, blogging allows students to write about issues that are significant in their lives, learning or work, using devices that are accessible to them without the need to be on campus. Where teaching practice requires students to read and respond to arbitrarily selected non-fiction articles, through blogging, students can read and respond to articles written by other learners and start to take part in an online community of learning. So I proceeded with the aim of trying to make a difference, to inspire a change in practice that would positively impact the learner's experience. Now, at this point, I'm going to ask Simon to share a quick poll with you. Could you use the poll to indicate if you have any blogging experience, or if you have some, or if you have very little? It'll be interesting to see. Thanks, Simon. I can see most people have responded by saying that they have some experience, and that's very interesting. Very few people saying that they have a lot of experience. Given that I wanted to do a project on blogging, and knowing that I had never blogged in my life before, I set off to first try to understand how blogging works, and I ended up with two key models that informed my thinking for my course. The first model shown here is a model that I created myself, informed by my choices that I made when I set out on my blogging journey. The principle that I adopted was that I could either write about my work, my life, or my learning, or alternatively, I could choose to write about the impact that each of these areas had on the others, and I chose the latter of the two strategies. By sharing on my blog the knowledge and experience therefore transmits out into the community, there's no surprises there. But the next model represents the theory of reasoned action by Fishbein and Eisen, which directed me to think about attitudes and social norms within the educational community. that might impact on people's behaviours and influence their choices of whether or not to use technology-enhanced learning strategies in their learning and teaching practice. So the next step was then for me to try blogging for myself. And I have to say, I was quite overwhelmed because in 12 weeks there were almost 800 visits to my blog from all over the world, from Canada to Japan, Australia, United Arab Emirates, and so many other countries in between. But one thing that kept coming back to me was, why do I advocate for mobile blogging? Well, this was articulated to me just recently in the Open University's 2021 edition of Innovating Pedagogy, Best Learning Moments. Mobile technology affords me the opportunity to capture thoughts, reflections, and images, etc., as they happen, and write or reflect on my learning during those short snippets of time when learning works well for me. I lost count in the number of times I had a great idea for a lesson or an idea for a blog post that simply drifted out of my head by the time I got back to my desk at home. Using mobile technology, that's much less of a problem. So, what's happening? What's happening in my course? At this point, I could share some screenshots of my course content with you, but actually I don't think that's the important outcome of this project. However, I have asked if Simon could share a link to the course on OpenLearn at this stage, and you're all more than welcome to have a look, try some of the activities and give feedback. But for me, the most exciting thing to emerge from this are the themes that are developing through professional discussions that are taking place in the discussion forums. And there are a lot of emerging issues. Participants are sharing thoughts about inclusion and considering in depth whether or not some of the approaches that they're using are truly accessible and inclusive for students with various needs. There emerged something of a debate recently about issues of identity and whether or not young people are addicted to mobile devices. Do we need to train them to be less distracted? Should we be wielding disciplinary policy as a punitive action? They're also discussing learning design and how additional CPD could help benefit them as educators to create more engaging learning experiences. Openness and open educational practice has received mixed reviews, with some embracing the idea of sharing, creating blogs and projects for their students designed to develop learners' digital literacy awareness. Equally, there are others who are resisting OEP on the basis of risk to their personal identity and the privacy of other students in the group. Interestingly, there are even some lecturers who are so intimidated by openness that they would rather email me their thoughts and comments personally than have a professional discussion in an open forum. Most recently, some interesting debate opened with regard to cheating in online assessments, which I was then able to research and recently write a blog post about. There's a huge amount of discussion taking place, but in these conversations, what I can see is that as an organisation, we're starting to move past the point of an emergency response to COVID-19, and we're starting to question which technologies actually enhance the learning and teaching experience. And this emergence of criticality is a far more important outcome than any I could have anticipated. So, with that in mind, what are the next steps? Well, I'm aware that what I've created in this course has something of a life of its own. And as I continue to moderate the online discussions that are taking place and a greater diversity of opinion starts to take shape within the discussion areas, I'm actually really excited by the prospect that this will continue to grow and inform my scholarship practice, alongside that of other educators who might choose to join me on the journey. I've already been inspired, intrigued, and even enraged by some of these discussions, but each experience has directed me to do the reading, learn, and share with others. So, in terms of my own learning journey, I look forward to where my next steps in learning practice will take and network practice will take me. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, McLean. And that's just 10 minutes. You were about 2 seconds off. Brilliantly timed. Can we have a round of applause for McLean, please? Thank you. There you go. Quite a few questions have gone through, McLean. You've really pricked people's imaginations, I think. Um, who did you expect might be the audience for your course, and has it turned out that way?
Well, interestingly, I expected the audience for the course to be largely colleagues that I work with within the organisation, but in opening up the course beyond my employer's VLE, I've actually started to make contacts with the local university, and some students who are studying for their teaching qualifications have come on board. Some social scientists who have no connection to education have come on board, and the audience is continuing to diversify. So it's been a really interesting experience in that sense.
I'm sure it has. It's a fascinating journey you've been on. How did networking for yourself influence your project and the directions you took?
Networking for myself, I think networking was important for me in terms of I was very aware when I went to Open Learn Create as a platform that absence of peer review. And I think for me, that was the biggest benefit that I got from network practice was the willingness that people in the H818 cohort and my own colleagues and even people beyond that were willing to give me feedback on how the course was created, and engage in some of the activities that were there as well. So for me, it was very much about the peer review process that was really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. It is a really valuable thing if you can, generate it. Um, from the process of developing the course, what would you say is the key takeaway for the audience in terms of what they can do better to support colleagues in sharing practice?
I think for me, the key takeaway was the theory of reasoned action, where it kind of directed me to think about that people's decisions and people's choices are informed by their past experience, and they bring that with them to their experience of technology enhanced learning. So it's always worth questioning people's attitudes and people's social norms and the kind of culture of the group that you're working with, because then you know, or you can start to address some of the barriers and some of the challenges that these people are addressing.
Yeah, absolutely. And a quick question. Have you looked at the difference between microblogging as opposed to what you might call blogging at your computer? The different modes of blogging. Do they have different, do they achieve different things?
That is actually the next kind of development on from this is a lot of people have drawn the difference between blogging and microblogging to my attention, and that's actually going to be the next part of my research.
Excellent. Well, there's loads of people saying in the chat pane they're going to have a go either at your course or even at blogging as a result of your presentation. So thank you very much. Just one
Thank you.
more
That's
quick
lovely.
question, actually. Kevin asked, do you think the punitive punishments in terms of mobile devices in education will affect the way they are viewed for things like blogging?
Um, my view is, and I think it's true with any form of technology enhanced learning, is different technologies are appropriate in different contexts, and it very much depends on the learners and the context that you're working in. But I do think that perhaps there's a negative attachment to the use of technology in some circumstances. I still see um, people in my own workplace, for example, using policy as a punitive action against young people on the assumption that they're addicted to their mobile
Yeah.
phones. And that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of research out there, which is actually on my next slide, and is part of the references that you can look at, which might kind of address some of those issues.
Fantastic. Thank you, McLean. Brilliant answers to the questions. You've really inspired people. Can we have another round of applause, please? Thank you.